The writing in Granblue is one of the big reasons why it's done so well for so long. I wouldn't say it's mind-blowing or anything, but when you have a cast of over 500 something characters, there's a ton of variety in the types of stories you can tell. And this is something that's kept the game fresh in the 7 years it's been around. How they tell these stories is also a big factor. One thing that's immediately noticeable is that everything is voice acted, which again, in a game with 500 something characters, that's pretty insane, and is what set it apart from other gachas. This becomes even more important when some stories can be carried simply by a VA doing an amazing job. Now there are three main ways Granblue handles its storytelling. Those are the main quest, fate episodes, and events and side stories. While they all share a visual novel style format, what they cover is a bit different. The main quest focuses on the main character's journey in order to find their missing father. Fate episodes are individual stories that tend to focus on a single playable character. Events are temporary side stories that usually focus on a group of characters. After some time, they are permanently added to the game and are then called side stories. As a heads up about the Versus characters, aside from Gran and Jita, only Catalina has a large presence in the main questline. Fairy does make some appearances though. For events and side stories, Vasaraga, Zeta, Percival, and Lancelot all have large roles in major storylines. The rest do have some sort of presence in them though. And for Fate episodes, well, since they're tied to playable characters, everyone has one. Each one comes with its own pros and cons, so let's dive into them. The main quest in Granblue starts off with Gran or Jita receiving a letter from their missing father. This letter talks about the island Estaltia, located at the end of the skies. Using this information, they prepare to set off on a journey with their buddy V in order to reach the island, with the hopes of finding their father there. Before they're able to leave, however, they run into Lyria and Catalina, who are currently fleeing the Earth's empire. Being the kind-hearted person that they are, they attempt to aid the two, only to suffer a lethal blow once reinforcements are called in. Lyria, not wanting her would-be rescuer to die, links her life to theirs in order to save them. They'll then use the power resulting from that link in order to push back the Empire soldiers. This will then give the group enough time to escape. After getting acquainted with each other, they decide to keep traveling together and will eventually meet the other members to make up the main crew, those being Rackham, Io, Eugen, and Rosetta. These members, referred to as the main crew, will be present for almost the entirety of the main story. There are also other supporting characters that stick around for a while, but that depends on what arc the story is in. Currently, there are 3 arcs in the main story, those being Girl in Blue, Dawning Sky, and Wayfaring Astral. Versus would have to take place sometime during the 3rd arc due to a certain Blue Knight who shows up. Relink, from what I remember, will take place after the 3rd arc. To give my opinion of the main story, I think it's alright. It's not exactly my favorite, but overall it's pretty consistent, and they usually do a pretty good job ramping it up towards the end of each arc. Now, it does take a long ass time to update, and I wish more characters would appear, but I kinda get why they don't. Next up, we have Fate episodes, and unlike the main story, they are hella inconsistent, and I mean that for better and worse. The tone, length, and subject matter differ greatly between Fate episodes. Some can be as short as 15 minutes, while others can easily push past 45. Some can be about relaxing at the beach, while others are about dealing with the guilt of causing the completely unnecessary and preventable deaths of an entire town. Some take place while Gran and Jita are still a newbie, while others can have them already be an experienced and established Skyfarer. And the deciding factor for all this is usually which character is being covered. As you can imagine, for someone like Luane, all his Fate episodes are generally lighthearted and goofy. While once you start looking at some of the more morally gray characters, then things obviously get a lot more serious. Fate episodes are generally told in 4 parts, one acting as an introduction and the other 3 being the meat of the story. Completing all 4 parts will usually unlock a character a new skill. Also, there is a thing called a 5-star uncap, which gameplay-wise will increase a character's max level and provide a large boost in power. Along with that, they come with additional Fate episodes that focus on a character's personal growth in order to justify the boost in power. Most characters don't have a 5-star uncap because they happen around 1 a month, but the ones that do benefit a ton from it, both gameplay and story-wise. An example from Versus would be Narmaya. Despite being a popular character, she had no presence in the main quest or side stories, so she ended up being a pretty one-note character before her uncap. Once she got her uncap, they did a ton to expand on the character. Not only did we learn a bunch about her past, but she was even able to overcome some of her personal hangups, all while going toe-to-toe with one of the strongest characters in Granblue. This personal growth was also referenced in some of her interactions in Versus. But the best thing about Fate episodes is that it's tied to playable units. This means you know that one character you really like, and how they're completely irrelevant to any other story content in Granblue? Well, as long as they get alternate versions, you can get content dedicated solely to them. Now obviously getting alternate versions is the hard part since they tend to go to popular characters who are usually a little more relevant to the different plot lines in Granblue. But that doesn't mean you can't have a little hope for that one special character in your heart to finally get tossed a bone. But once they do, and like I said, Fate episodes normally have some really good character development in store for them. And lastly, we have events and side stories. And let me tell you, this is where the good shit is. If you ask most people what their favorite story from Granblue is, they'll likely respond back with one of these. This is because by focusing on different groups of characters, they're really able to put Granblue's large roster to work. It is hella inconsistent though. They can go from straight bangers like the Maydays to giant flops like Songs of Redemption. Some make you want to burn through them as soon as they're released, like the Society event series, while others be like, the strength of events lies in the amount of variety there is. We've had one inspired by Bollywood, we've had a Jaws Sharknado parody that has tons of lore implications, we've even had one about a group of cats and what it means to be free and dealing with oppression. These type of events tend to have a unique cast and are usually one-offs, however it is uncommon for them to get follow-ups on the line if they had really positive reception. After about 7 years, there's quite a few long-running event series, but the ones I would consider the big three are What Makes the Sky Blue, this is what Versus is based off of, then you have the Dragon Knights, which features Lancelot, Percival, Vayne, and Siegfried. And lastly, we have the Society, and let me tell you, this is easily the best part of Granblue, hands down. It has consistently been great, and it has a cast with some of my favorite characters, and the action has always been on point. It's basically what happened when the writers decide they're tired of magic and want to move on to sci-fi. I can't wait to talk about it some more in a video covering Basaraga and Zeta since they are main characters in it. Also, it's probably the biggest event series due to the sheer number of events that are either involved in it or related to it. During the December stream, they announced the next part in the series, and let me tell you, there's a ton of hype for it going forward, since it's almost guaranteed some wild stuff to happen if the trailer is anything to go by. I'll probably focus on covering the events and side stories once I'm done with all the Versus characters because there's a ton of content there. Even if you seriously play Granblue, you probably missed a couple, and more than anything, I just want to talk about them. But the reason why I made this is so we'll all be on the same page. I'll be referring back to these a ton during the character videos, and so when I say something like, remember that time Charlotta shot 3 people in their Fate episodes? You understand what I'm talking about. With that said, thanks for watching.